Hello, I'm going to keep this intro brief. Chances are, those of you watching right now probably don't even know what this game is, so thanks for taking a chance on this video. Hudson Soft's Super Adventure Island 2 was first released not in Japan, but North America in 1994, 1 year before I was born. Since this is the last truly original entry in the Adventure Island series, you could say that in a sense, this entire franchise existed before I did, and that's pretty cool. If I were to create a list of my top 25 favorite video games of all time, then this one would be the worst of the best, as it'd certainly be on there, but likely right at the bottom. You know, it's hard for me to justify placing this above something else in its genre, like Metroid Dread, which I do think is an objectively better experience, but something about the contents of this very expensive cartridge calls out to my tropical island medieval fantasy-loving soul. I recognize it's a flawed game. So today I'm going to delve into my complicated feelings about this imperfect yet underrated SNES classic I just can't get out of my head. Thanks for letting me take you all down this whirlpool of hyperfixation. I recently had a conversation with a commenter, BoJordan64, about this game, and they said something I really liked. Super Adventure Island 2 is basically a way more accessible Zelda to The Adventure of Link. It's easy to see the comparisons to that divisive entry in the Legend of Zelda series. We've got a top-down overworld crawling with enemies, and encountering one changes the perspective to a 2D side-scrolling plane where the objective becomes escaping the dangers of this space, by reaching the exit on either the left or right side of the screen. Master Higgins, the modern cave boy rocking a dad hat, wields not stone axes but genuine steel this time, with moves pulled directly from Link's arsenal. Namely the downward and upward thrusts. There's heart containers and magic bottles with spells Higgins can learn. We've got different colored sets of armor, and even a Death Mountain-esque maze area. But if you're not a fan of Zelda 2, don't dismiss Super 2 just yet. It's way more accessible, largely because while still challenging, it's far more forgiving. And that's saying a lot, considering the Adventure Island series itself thus far has had some of the toughest platforming in anything I've ever played. SAI 2 is a follow-up to the Metroidvania style of the Famicom's last officially licensed release, Adventure Island 4. While the other Adventure Islands are more or less straightforward side-scrollers that need to be cleared with a speedrunning mentality, that's thanks to this vitality meter requiring the player to constantly collect fruits and veggies to feed our hungry boy Higgins, 4 and Super 2 slow things down, throwing puzzle solving into the mix with a much greater focus on exploration to uncover secrets that lead not to simple temporary power-ups, but permanent upgrades that make Higgins stronger and or open up access to new areas. So while this is clearly another take, and in many ways a refinement of, the formula for established, Super 2's story seems to be a direct continuation of New Adventure Island, released 2 years prior, because it takes place during Higgins and Tina's honeymoon, right after they get married at the end of that game. The whole Adventure Island timeline is a confusing mess, made much worse thanks to the troubling localization I already made a video about. Just know that Higgins and Tina have been dating for a while. They finally got hitched, and are now on holiday celebrating their matrimony. That's really the only overarching plot that we get. The main villain, who is unnamed in English but called something like Demon God Akum in Japanese, seems to be a return of the wicked magician from the first Super Adventure Island. But that isn't the case, since their name was Darkcloak or Darky in Japan. This hooded figure just appears out of thin air at the end of this game to kidnap the king, to rule over Waku Waku, and Tina so that all her love and beauty will be theirs. Does this sorcerer or sorceress have the hots for her? Or is their dialogue meant to be taken literally, and they want to steal her beauty to become prettier and younger? Despite the game having quite a bit of text, there are a lot of blank spots like this we have to fill in with our imaginations. In the opening, a tropical storm causes Higgins and Tina to separate. A bolt of lightning crashes down and strikes their raft, sending them into the drink where they wash up on Waku Waku, with their memories wiped, of course. It's a pretty cliché tale of amnesia, which sounds kind of lame, but I think it works for the way the story is told, with the couple slowly remembering each other with every world that's cleared. The way I headcanon this otherwise unbelievable series of events, though, is that the storm was summoned specifically by the final boss. and that lightning strike was targeted. Instead of a random unfortunate coincidence, the amnesia could be a spell that was cast too, giving the antagonist an actual significant role in the narrative as the mastermind behind an elaborate scheme. Keep in mind that the game never says this is what happens. I just like to think of him as a plotting puppet master instead of a throwaway spectacle for the end of the game. Anyone who's played to completion will tell you that the final boss's true form has no precedent. It doesn't make any sense. The penultimate showdown takes place high up in the clouds, but with a final strike of Higgins' weapon, the two are transported to a moon kingdom in space. What is this? He also turns into a giant one-eyed scorpion for some reason. Now, I don't know if this was intentional by the designers or anything, and in fact, it might be a bit of a stretch. But in looking at all of the final bosses from every Adventure Island title side by side, I noticed something. Each final boss is either one of three things: a magic user, a demon, or an alien. For the most part, it's the first of those three. We've got the evil witch doctor, King Killer, Baron Bronski, a baboon magician, and the eggplant wizard, a personification of Higgins' least favorite food. Then there's the aforementioned Darkcloak, who apparently does bad things because they think it's funny. Our sole demon of the series can be found at the end of Adventure Island 2, Beelzebub in Japanese, after the Lord of the Flies, the Hell Demon Beelzebub. And finally, we have our classic alien at the end of Adventure Island 3. It flies around in that typical three-orbed style UFO Japan loves so much, and looks like a pretty generic tentacled extraterrestrial with a big ol' head. Now, with all that said, get this. Super Adventure Island 2, which is the last entry in this series that's not a prequel or remake, has a final boss that is a magic user, a demon, and an alien combined. He's clearly a sorcerer. His name in Japan is, again, Demon God Akum, and his true form, a Cyclops scorpion creature, is fought in space. If this wasn't a coincidence, which it probably is, that's a solid way to link together these seemingly random themes for Higgins' rivals. We have the amalgamation of everything he's ever fought for the series' grand finale. This baddie is supposed to be a surprise, as he only shows up in person, or whatever he is, for the game's climax. Funnily enough, the story sets up this big bird to be the big bad instead. When Tina wakes up in her delirious state, she is found by Waku Waku's king. And since the only NPCs in this game are old men, and men who aren't as old, like the innkeeper and this front desk clerk at Curly's casino, the king naturally falls in love with likely the only lady he's seen in years and has a wedding ceremony prepared right away. But of course, before they could exchange their vows, the giant bird swoops in to steal her away. Our king refers to the bird as a monster of outrageous brutality, but I mean, I don't know, it is just a big bird. The brute does use its children as ammunition to attack Higgins, though. Nevertheless, no motive is given for this apparent beast. It doesn't mistake Tina for its young or anything like that, but I think the obvious answer is that it and all of the other uglies of this game are soldiers of the main villain. Still, it's interesting that nothing greater is ever hinted at until the end. We're made to believe for 98% of this game that the end goal is to defeat this Helmrock King. So the overall plot is fine. Higgins being recruited by this king to save the queen-to-be, which is really his own wife that everyone gradually learns as he gets closer to saving her, is a neat gimmick for a simple game like this. The quality of the English dialogue itself, I would say, is a bit all over the place though. It definitely doesn't take itself too seriously, which can be a good thing. You have to have fun with a silly premise like this. However, most of the humor comes more so from a respective line being ridiculous and unexpected rather than it actually being cleverly written. The aforementioned not that old innkeeper, for example, gives you a hint about an old legend that he read in the Inquirer. Then at one point, Tina tells Higgins to hurry up and rescue her because she's missing her favorite soaps. Okay, when exactly does this game take place? I mean, I know the main character wears a sports cap, but tabloid magazines and television? You can't tell me these characters live in or after the 20th century. I suppose we could apply Flintstones logic here, but this isn't a sitcom. You have to show me this world's mock version of the technology first before dropping an out-of-nowhere line about soap operas. Also, forgive me, as this was all the way back in 2020, and his comment has since been deleted, so I don't have a record of precisely what was said. But professional Japanese to English localizer Clyde Mandelin, best known for his excellent fan translation of Mother 3, actually responded to me when I reached out with questions about the original language version of this game. Yes, I go through phases where I'm obsessed with this particular game. But anyway, an actual infamous line of dialogue in one of the cutscenes is, "The ice giant cometh, and breaketh, openeth the dooreth." To my surprise, and from what I remember, is that he told me this line is pretty dry in Japanese, meaning that the localization team was definitely feeling goofy and took liberties with the translated text. What's more, in the English version of this game, Tina consistently finds creative ways to call Higgins overweight. She teases him throughout the adventure, calling him somewhat chubby, a hunk of a Neanderthal, a chubby hunk of blubber, fat one, a romantic slob, and that he's gained a bit of a gut. So 6 lines of insults in total. Like with the final boss, I wanted to try and reason why they would write her like this. Particularly that last one I mentioned about him having gained a bit of a gut since the start of this adventure. This is the only game in the entire franchise where Higgins is unable to eat anything. There is no food to collect whatsoever on any of these islands, unless those health and magic potions count and they're loaded with sugar or something. What's more, he's running around swinging a sword all day, climbing, rowing, swimming, and jumping all over the place. This dude is more active than my surfboarding, powerlifting, mountain climbing father. How in the world would he have gained weight? And then it clicked. While the player is moving around Higgins constantly, what happens when they aren't touching the controller? That's weird. He's just standing there, like a normal early human being. He's not forever running in place, like he's Jason Statham from Crank, who needs to keep his adrenaline high or else his heart will stop. Super Adventure Island 2 is the only game where Higgins can actually relax and stand still. So maybe he has some sort of condition, where if he doesn't bounce up and down at all times, he gains weight at a rapid rate. I don't know. I am just making stuff up here, but I wanted to point this out anyway, as his lack of an idle animation is another interesting distinction to set this game apart from its predecessors. That all being said, the text is overall hit or miss for me, with the worst offender being Tina and Higgins' reunion when she's finally rescued. Don't get me wrong, it's a sweet moment, but the dialogue is so corny and impossible to take seriously. I will say though, it certainly does stand out. You can bet that, for better or for worse, I'll remember the line, "I whipped all those weenies to smithereenies for the rest of my days." Also, why does Tina's hair change color during these interstitials? His love life in the English games is already a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. So we don't need anything else to make us doubt that this is the same girl. I think we've squeezed out all of the story water from this stone cartridge, so I'm going to now get into the flow of the gameplay. There are 6 islands for Higgins to conquer: Poka Poka, Hia Hia, Boa Boa, Puka Puka, Sala Sala, and Fua Fua. The names are clearly Hawaiian inspired, perhaps to an insensitive degree, but the names are also Japanese onomatopoeia. Fua Fua, for example, means something like light and fluffy, which makes sense for an island where you have to climb a mountain to reach the heavens. You've got the typical video gamey stages. There's a forest/jungle, an icy tower, a volcano, a beach world, a pyramid in a desert, and the cloudy mountain. Your options for quickly traveling around the game's world are actually quite great. There's the standard way of sailing from island to island, linear warp doors that can be unlocked with what are at first one-way switches, and 2 magic spells. The first, Feather, sends Higgins all the way back to the starting screen of the island he's currently exploring. Wing uses up more magic, but is incredibly helpful because it can instantly transport him to the starting screen of any island from the overworld. It can also take him to any hot spring rooms that have been discovered. Yes, you can heal in this game via hot springs, which is a video game trope I have always loved. I would say 5 to 6 of the 8 magic spells are ones you'll use pretty regularly. Feather, Wing, Recovery, and Cure especially so. Recovery costs just 2 magic bottles to use, but only replenishes half a heart of Higgins' health. Cure eats up 8 bottles, but grants a full recovery. I initially slept on Power Boost and wasn't using it in my playthroughs because it doesn't last for very long, but temporary invincibility during a boss fight is something you should definitely try taking advantage of. The oddly named Tie spell slows down all enemies on screen and is pretty cheap, so I could make a case for this one being useful too. But both Blizzard and Blaze are pointless in my opinion. They're screen clearing spells, but that doesn't mean much when more enemies will just spawn in when you get moving again. They're cool to use once and that's it really. Hey, pretty respectable though, with 75% of the magic in this game actually being fairly invaluable. The other goodies to find are optional armor sets and weapons. It's pretty cool how each set, consisting of armor, a shield, and a sword, have elemental attributes assigned to them. Instead of Ocarina of Time though, where the red-colored clothes are used in the fiery area and the blue-colored tunic is for water, here we're playing by Pokemon rules, meaning you'll want to be utilizing the element that's opposite to the environment you're currently in. So the fire sword works well against enemies in the snow level, while the ice armor keeps Higgins cool in the volcanic heat. This doesn't stay consistent as the aqua armor helps Higgins swim faster, but the blade that's part of this set is the Thunder Sword, which makes sense offensively since electricity and water don't mix. Oddly, there are many more tiers of sword upgrades that don't match to a corresponding armor and shield too. But the idea of it is interesting, and more simply than having an effect on gameplay, I just like the fact that Master Higgins' sprite is frequently changing because each new set of equipment you find is a different color. His sprite doesn't change during most cutscenes though, very funnily implying that he routinely strips off all of his armor before approaching Tina. I guess to show off that body she complains about. I bet you're wondering, what's the ultimate gear? The strongest set you could possibly obtain. And to that, I have to sigh because sadly it's locked behind a paywall. No, I don't mean you have to pay to win with real cash despite owning the game, as that wasn't commonplace 30 years ago. I mean to say it's locked behind a paywall of in-game currency, because the gorgeous golden gear is trapped behind the game's greatest barrier of all, a casino counter. This game darkly predicted that Konami would one day buy out Hudson Soft and do nothing with the Adventure Island franchise because they're a little too interested in gambling games. They've got your classic slot machines, and horse betting too, though the horses are all of the monsters Higgins fights. You know, lots of retro video games had a gambling feature. Mario wasn't even safe. Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3, the RPGs, Super Mario 64 DS. The game selection here isn't as fun as cards with Luigi, but it's decent. Just annoying that the very best tools are prizes to be won from minigames that wear out their welcome quickly. I'd be more on board if just a few optional items could be obtained here, but there's a lot. And the really desirable stuff, the light armor, sword, and shield, are so expensive that you'll very likely have to spend hours if you want to get everything. Sadly, it also discourages speedrunners from the 100% category. This part just halts the action. Usually in my personal playthroughs, I just go for the life bottle, light shield, and boomerang, because those are realistically obtainable. Unless you like these types of casino games, stay far away. I know it looks cool, but you can definitely reach the end without that sweet shiny gold. That being said, I wanted to show off everything for the sake of this review, and I'm an Adventure Island nut, so I grinded to get it all. If you're a freak like me, I'd say Run for Dough is the easiest one to consistently win at. I had it running while I played a certain other title with both Island and Adventure in the name. Anyway, I've been mostly positive about the game so far, but let me continue on with my gripes. I think it's a problem that the game seems like it occasionally takes pleasure in wasting your time, and not in a funny way like Super Paper Mario. The level design can be trollish, in a worse way than how previous Adventure Islands set traps to try and trip up the player. In those games, the enemy placement can be downright diabolical, but since you can restart a given level very quickly, and tricky platforming is the name of the game, it's not too much of a problem. But in an exploratory adventure where you're already required to backtrack, fake floors are especially unfun. And at least you could kinda tell which platforms would give out on you in NES Adventure Island by paying attention to the shadows said platforms cast. Here, there's no indication that a particular section of the floor can secretly be a pit at all. You can just fall through, forced to run back and fight all of the respawned enemies with nothing else changed. Thankfully, the fake floors aren't used much after the second world, but there are more time-wasting annoyances later, like a maze of fake doors in the pyramid. Bottom line, the player shouldn't be punished for not somehow already knowing the layout of the level. So I say go ahead and use a walkthrough to get through these unfair sections. The enemies are pretty neat, especially as they're depicted on the box art as drawn by Susumu Matsushita, the creator of Neki the Fox, who is Famitsu Magazine's mascot. Higgins looks like a mix between Mario and Link here. which I think subconsciously helped me as a child immediately develop a fondness for this game. The sprites are pretty faithful to his artwork too, much more than the other Adventure Islands. For bosses, you've got a rocket-powered flying turtle that's legally distinct from Toto/Gamera, the giant monster. There's a frozen woolly mammoth boss with a floppy trunk that's fun to hit with your sword. You have to first unthaw to fight like Goat from Majora's Mask. This killer squid darkens the water with its ink as the fight progresses, which maybe made it trickier to see on a CRT television, but makes very little difference on modern screens. We've even got an apple-throwing version of Wispy Woods that's meaner looking, but even more of a pushover. This tree weirdly sinks into the ground as he gets weaker, making him progressively easier to hit, and you can basically avoid all damage if you cowardly hide in the corner like the Dark Link fight in Zelda 2. See how we came around there? We went full circle. The mummy boss is pretty uninspired, but it's funny that he will not stop attacking, even when you've taken out his hands, so he's nothing but a floating head. In general, the sprite work and graphics are pretty great, though I wonder if the background artists ran out of time, as some areas, particularly this boulder chase in Boa Boa, seem like placeholders. I mean, the background here is just solid pink. It could have been a really standout moment, but as is, I don't know, it's just kind of weird, and just kind of surreal in a not fun way. My favorite level aesthetically is Fua Fua. It's got this ominous final area aura that I love, and the music is haunting, until you get to these enemies that look like Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog. And they throw acorns, but it looks like something else. But let me tell you, the two Super Adventure Island games have the best OSTs in the series by far. These are some seriously sublime songs. Even though the legendary Yuzo Koshiro didn't return to compose this one, I have got to just let you all listen to the best bits from three of my favorites. The first is On the Open Seas. Then we have Hia Hia. And finally, Fua Fua. This was Thane Gaming Radio. Thank you for listening. I complained about some aspects of the level design before, but besides that, it's really well done. This is a cohesive world that's fun to explore. It feels dangerous, so it respects the level of challenge the Adventure Island series is famous for, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not so frustrating that you'll want to snap your controller in half. The combat and collectibles are satisfying. It is genuinely exciting to revisit areas of older islands to see what that previously unreachable treasure chest contains. It does the genre right, and if you like this sort of game feel, I highly recommend giving Super 2 a try. There's a magic here that's been untapped by a lot of players. Unfortunately, the last time this game could be legally acquired without spending a fortune on the original is the re-release on the now defunct Wii Shop channel.
Matt!
Yeah?
Update day!
What?
New Wii titles!
What? I'm in the bathroom.
Update day for the Wii shopping channel!
I don't see Konami allowing this game or any of the other Adventure Islands on Nintendo Switch Online, so we'll just have to wait for them to release a collection for modern platforms. I'm not holding my breath. Well, thanks for letting me rant and rave about a childhood favorite of mine you've probably never played. I used to doodle the light, sun, star, aqua, and moon symbols from this game all over my middle school notebooks. They just looked like cool icons, but I'm sure nobody knew they were from a pretty cool Super NES game. Now you do. So spread the word, thank you, and I'll see you next time.